Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this live panel sponsored by the Digital Navigator. I'm your summit host, Jan Koch, and as you can see, I am joined by four amazing people, business owners, marketers, entrepreneurs, who are talking about empowering brands and businesses to thrive online. So my role is just to be the moderator. I'll be very quick with this introduction. First and foremost, I want to encourage you to ask questions during this panel. We are going for about an hour with this conversation, and we have comments embedded everywhere where you can see the video, whether that's on the website, whether that's on Facebook, or whether that's on YouTube. Get your questions out and shoot them at us because we are here to answer them for you. And obviously, if you're catching the replay, still submit your questions because I'll be monitoring the chat. I'll be forwarding your questions and we'll get them answered for you. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to my beloved guests on this panel so they can introduce themselves. And then Jim and Paul will lead the panel for themselves. Neil, why don't you go first with the introduction?
Thank you so much. And great to have the opportunity to meet you, Jan, and thanks for all you're doing. My name is Neil Moore. I'm originally from Melbourne, Australia, but I've been living in the United States in California for the last 27 years. I'm a music educator, and I hear music and I see 2- and 3-dimensional shapes. Discovered as an adult that I can communicate that to people in a way that allows them to see music as I do. And in that process, it completely transforms how quickly people can learn music. So over a period of a couple of decades, I developed it firstly into a system of education, then a system of training educators how to teach. And primarily over the last 25 years, that's been our focus, training music educators around the world who want to be licensed to teach my system of education. So we have an international community of educators, 700 educators across 12 countries. And then we also have an online self-study program for students, and we have a student community across 126 countries. And I just feel we're scratching the tip of the iceberg and still feel like a startup.
Love it. And Jen, can you go next? I think Jen lost connection to her microphone. So, Paul, while Jen fixes that, can you take a spot?
Sure. Oh, actually, I see Jen's microphone is back on, so I'll be polite. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Jen.
It muted. I apologize. Yes, my name is Jen Gilchrist, and I am a transformational success mentor and spiritual teacher. I have been an entrepreneurial journey for over 23 years. I previously had an industry business where I specialized in hair and makeup, leading bridal parties and such, created a very successful 6-figure business doing that. And along the way, my passions changed. And now I love supporting those who are really awakening to their spiritual journey, develop their intuitive gifts, and really align and create businesses that are aligned with their passions and with their purpose to really create this world to be a better place.
It sounds super interesting. I think that's giving us a lot of opportunity to talk about and to dive deeper into later on. Paul, now it's your turn.
Well, I'm from the Digital Navigator as well as with Jim, and we're co-founders of the agency, and we both merged our agencies. And one of my passions is really helping people increase their sales online, but to make a bigger impact in the world. So we always think about, well, what is the purpose of your business? Why are you doing what you're doing? And for us, well, I say for us because I know Jim very well, what drives us is really partnering with businesses and people that have a bigger mission. And that's why we have Neil, for example, with teaching music and playing the piano and opening up that creativity. That's really a way that we can change humanity. And I strongly believe that. And likewise with Jen, she's so passionate about teaching different spiritual practices and understandings that are adapted for modern times and that can help people when they're facing personal challenges. And then ultimately we do that through technology, marketing, website management, and different tactical means, but it's really about making an impact in the world.
That is why I love working with you as well. And Jim, over to you.
Great. Hey, nice to meet everybody. Thanks for setting aside some time to listen to this. I think you're going to find it very valuable. These are two very successful, not just content providers that some of you might be seeking out, but business people that you're going to learn a lot from. And if you have any additional questions at the end of this session for them or need some additional context, feel free to reach out to us at the Digital Navigator. And personally, you can find all our contact information on our website. I won't go into that now, so you can listen to our two distinguished clients here, and they're key clients among our 67 clients that we have. For what it's worth, a little background about myself: I come from the restaurant business, being in for 16 years, from dishwasher to finance person at the head office. And then I went on to teach at the university. And along the way, back in 2010, I discovered social media via my students making fun of me. And one thing I always share in seminars is never act like you know more than a younger person about social media. And that was true in 2010. Same thing is true today with my 16-year-old son. But that said, I figured out how to make business sales right away. And I realized that, hey, social media is actually driving sales on steroids. I met Gary Vaynerchuk back in 2010, and it's the same advice I give to everybody on every session when they ask me, hey, what's the best advice I could have? Find somebody doing what you desire to do and just copy and paste what they do. Don't question anything. Then eventually make it your own. And that's what I did between 2010 and 2013, when you could reach out to anybody on Twitter, any celebrity, and they would answer back. And a celebrity to me was Gary Vaynerchuk back then. I'll stop there and just share with you, I am co-owner with Paul with the Digital Navigator, and hope you really enjoyed this session as well as the other sessions on the summit as well too.
Love this so much. And I would love to hand it over to Jim and Paul by now, because you've prepared some very interesting questions to spark up a conversation with Jen and Neil here. So I'll mute myself and I'll hand over the lead to one of you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I want to give a bit more context about some of the challenges that both Jennifer and Neil were facing and how they overcame that. And the reason is, we learn best normally from stories and from examples of how other people do rather than theory, although I've had my fair share of reading books. And I'll start off with Jennifer. And Jennifer is really interesting story because we first met many years ago when I was hosting a podcast called The Spiritual Voice. And it was all in the context of sharing spiritual practices from all walks of life. And then she came back in last year and connected with me and Jim, asking for some marketing and sales support. And what for me stood out really strongly, and Jim says, every time you share that, Paul, you're so passionate about it, is Jennifer did not want to change the focus of her business and how she would be helping people. And you may have encountered this where you take a coaching program, an online training, or just as you grow your business, and eventually people steer you in the direction that's going to make you money, but that is not aligned with what you want to do. And that's what Jen was saying. Is she said, I don't want my message to be diluted. I really want to do this program that I'm passionate about, but other people are telling me I can't make this go. I have to adjust how I teach meditation, intuition, tapping into spirituality, so it aligns with different profit views so that people can justify buying my programs. And we said, no, that is not necessary. There's a way that we can market what she does in a way that is genuine, honest, and also aligned with what she's passionate about doing. And that's what we did together. Is we did a series of campaigns focusing on her Soul Success Unleashed program. And we've had countless students join this program. We've had many iterations of it already. And Jen is able to do what she's so passionate about. And that is really, really important in her story. And if you're listening to this right now, you may want to think, am I still on track with what I'm passionate of doing? Is my business still aligned with the vision that I have? And for me, that was the main takeaway from Jennifer's story. Jennifer, is there something you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my first business just happened relatively easily. I felt like I almost stumbled into just creating the six-figure line of success with, you know, doing what I loved. And yet when I went into the online space, I saw what was possible. I knew that I could do it, but I literally had spent, you know, years and well over $60,000, a lot of time, energy, and money, you know, learning all the strategies, as you said, having, you know, business coaches help me figure it out and how to message. And I started feeling really overwhelmed. I started feeling a bit defeated, actually, in that comparison trap of seeing other people just have other people I started with in these programs sometimes pop their business. And I really got exhausted trying to figure it all out. Several times business coaches directed me to, you know, you can't sell spirituality. You have to, you know, make it be more tangible in a way. And while I understand their point, I saw that my message was beginning to shift over time and was starting to draw in people that wasn't quite my joy of what I wanted to teach. It was aligned, but it was calling me into teaching a slightly different focus. And so I felt so relieved, really, and so excited when I ran across the Digital Navigator and began working with them, because they really spent the time to get to know me and to get to know my vision. And even more so, they believed in my vision. And it was really a powerful shift to have them support me in really 5 timesing my revenue since we've worked together in such a short time in my enrollment for the classes that I really want to be teaching. That is my passion, and probably I feel my zone of genius, right? What I'm called to do.
I just love that. And I can see everyone smiling and enjoying that. So I'm really happy for Jennifer. And again, as you're listening, this is a good moment for you to reflect on where you're at in your business. So then this can be actionable. And then Neil, I've also known Neil for several years, and we've done a few projects together. One of the first projects that was a bigger scope was his piano online program, which is allowing people to learn how to play the piano. It's a self-learning program, accessible throughout the world, and is very, very comprehensive in the sense that you have music tracks, you have videos that are high production, and it's very organized by parts and segments so that you can learn to play the piano without actually having to read a sheet. Which for me, that was completely mind-boggling, that you could learn to play the piano without reading a sheet. And I could see how that would open up the creativity of a lot more people. So I really like what he wanted to do there. And I would put that in this sphere of vocational, where most of the conversations actually have not been around the money. Is like, how can we reach more people? How can we make people that want to learn the piano understand that this is doable and achievable? And when we were making strategies, we built out his online platform, working with his team. It was really wonderful. He had a designer, a project manager, an IT specialist, and we were all able to collaborate, but we were thinking, how do we give that satisfaction and help people consume the content so they actually learn the ability of playing the piano and open that creativity, which is the big mission. And for me, that's a huge success, because there's over 20,000 people that are enrolled in that program, which is huge. And later on, when the way of doing business changed because of some of the recent circumstances, we had another project with Neil to start consolidating several of his website assets and some of his technology to reinforce some of the security, creating redundancy, managing risk, and also ease of how everything was happening, so that as the online portion of his business became more significant, it would not be increasing his business risk and actually decreasing it. And now I'll hand it over to you, Neil, so that you can share a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Prior to our working together, the vast majority of the content that I created lived in a physical world. So we were very materially physicalized. And so our entire body of intellectual property, which I've been seriously focused on developing and adding to over decades, pretty vast curriculum, It all lived on DVDs and CDs and books and packages and boxes, and we'd have to produce vast numbers of a large number of components in order to achieve an economy of scale, and that meant warehousing of physical items, and our in-house offices needed to be large enough to be able to carry in-house inventory, and then we needed a team to handle all of the physical items and the packaging and the shipping. It was a machine. And the ability for us to go digital, there was absolutely a degree of, obviously the knowledge that we had to move into the digital arena, but also the apprehension of taking an organization that had established both momentum and stability, and now what we're going to do is disrupt that dramatically and move over into a digital environment, and which has been revolutionary to do that in so many levels. It's allowed for all sorts of economies, as well as an exponential ability to, our outreach is exponentially grown. The thing that impacted us most significantly in all of this was the fact, the stability of the platform that Paul and Jim were able to create. We've just had no significant breakdown. The issues that we've had have been more user error or a certain degree of in-house functional uncertainty, but the quality and the standard of work that you guys have brought have not only allowed for our expansion to occur seamlessly, but there's also been a tremendous peace of mind that goes with that. And not having concern about the reliability of the platform opens up enough freedom and space psychologically, emotionally, to be able to think more creatively about what's next. So that's been extremely important for us. Thank you guys for that.
Nia, I've always been curious. When did you switch from going offline to online out of curiosity?
The process began 5 years ago, so quite recently, about a year before we first connected. And first, we've done things in stages. So we have a whole teacher body of intellectual property, and there's a whole body of student content as well. And the initial round was moving our teacher community into a digital environment, expanding that significantly with the student transition, which really fully only occurred during COVID. And prior to COVID, although our focus is on music lessons, music education, that's really the vehicle. The journey is the bigger picture here is, this is an extraordinary time in humanity. We are witnessing something incredible, all of us. I mean, the impact that we're seeing of artificial intelligence, the arrival of artificial intelligence and the impact of that, and virtual reality and augmented reality. We're witnessing human being becoming a hybrid biological, non-biological species. We're moving transport from the roads to the sky or underground. We're witnessing humanity becoming a multi-planetary species. I mean, what the heck? This is extraordinary. And the impact of technology over the last 20 years is nothing compared to what we're going to see in the next 5 to 7 years as billions of people come online for the very first time. So the thing that's exciting about that for me is that I'm of the view, as much as there's so much talk at the moment about Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and cryptocurrency as a whole, I'm of the view that the critical currency of the future is creativity. And so from my point of view, even though we are using music as a medium, the bigger picture for me is how do we contribute to causing a breakthrough in the creative capability of humanity? And in order to do that, we have to have a breakthrough not only in methodology, but also in access. And so one of the things that became very important for me a couple of years ago, just prior to us beginning to work with Paul and Jim, and the catalyst for doing that, was I saw that we needed to make world-class education available en masse at no cost. And so we began the development of an online curriculum designed specifically for students. And that's what we do. That's one of the major projects that we've done over this last 18 months is launch and grow an online community of students offering world-class education for free. And of course, the opportunity there of not only being able to have this program available to marginalized communities and youth at risk and penal institutions, drug and alcohol rehabilitation clinics, but also into developing nations, anywhere where people otherwise could not afford world-class education. And if we're going to do that, we have to have a stable platform that's scalable. And that's been the big deal for us, being able to build out the framework. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask a similar question of you, Jen, in a second. Neil, and you have 20,000 plus subscribers, is that correct?
In our online self-study community.
Gotcha. And how many team members do you have on your team that have helped you scale to the level?
Well, internally, we've scaled down just over COVID from an internal team of 13 down to 3.
Yep.
And largely that's been due to winding down the physical machine that I talked about. Mm-hmm. It's also been a time of transition for me in preparation for not having any idea really what would happen through the pandemic and just wanting to bring ourselves down to mission critical. So we have a team now of just 3 administrators, as well as a bunch of independent contractors, still about a dozen or so people that we call on a project by project basis. And then we have an educator team of about 700.
Right. And so then, an educate team essentially is like the folks that are actually leveraging your content, correct? Just want
correct.
To make sure that everybody understands that. So the lesson I want everybody to get out there, especially if you're going from physical to online, the scale in this world, if you're not familiar with it, it doesn't take a significant amount of resources from a employee, team member, contractor standpoint with most content providers, what we find. So here's a gentleman, he has 3 full-time team members, or part-time, and he has over 20,000 subscribers, paying subscribers, correct?
Although that's just in the online program. So then when we get into our student community in person, at any given week, we could have 10,000 students there as well.
I love how you make this sound so easy and so like, well, that's not a big deal. 20,000 paying subscribers. I mean, this is so cool. I mean, how many people watching this would love to operate on your scale in here?
Yeah,
I love it.
Thank you for saying that. The reality of it, of course, for me is that I feel as though it sounds bigger than it really is. In the world of music education, we are just now beginning to scratch the surface of the size and scope of the contribution that I'm committed to making. So just getting started.
Wonderful, exciting. And so, Jen, yourself, if you were to give advice to new content providers who's just getting started providing content online, what would be some of your suggestions or suggestion that would make the biggest impact you feel?
I think first and foremost, staying true to your vision, staying true to who you are and what makes you passionate, really not deviating, trying to fit yourself into what you think you have to do or what you think you should do, but just stay really committed to yourself and to what it is that you are here to uniquely bring to the world. And that's going to keep your passion and your motivation going. That consistency of showing up consistently online. For me, video has been very effective to show up consistently, just sharing about things that I know would serve the humanity or people that are following me and help them in that way has created that know, like, trust. It gives me a platform to build connections with people, and it allows me to ultimately create the effective change that I know I'm here to do. And so that's been something very consistent. The other thing I would say is be willing to get the support that you need, right? It's sometimes before you're ready. I know I hired my virtual assistant well before I ever made a dime online, because I knew that if I used all of my energy trying to figure out the tech and certain things all on my own, I would be too drained and not have the time and energy to really show up and do the creative work that I feel called to bring through.
Nice. And it would be fair to say that you're doing more than just a full-time living now, as far as what you're bringing in revenue-wise and what the future looks like in the next 2 years?
Absolutely. This is one of the most exciting things for me, is just bringing in the consistency. That was another reason why I came to Paul in the first place and Jim was because I wanted that consistency. There was this inconsistency of like feast or famine sort of online. I couldn't quite figure out that consistency in my income. And with working together, they've helped me bring in that consistency. And absolutely, I've already crossed the revenue of 6 figures for this year so far, which is a huge impact increase from last year. And I'm feeling very confident in that consistency and having that scale and grow. I feel like we're just getting started, and I'm really excited for what's to come for sure. And I've been able to do this as well with just 2 part-time admins, really. You know, my support with you guys, of course, the Digital Navigator team has a whole team of support, which is amazing. And then internally, it's just myself and 2 admins, which help me tremendously.
Great, thanks for sharing. I want to make sure everybody knows that if you want more information about Jen, she's at Soul Success, and I got to tell you, every time I'm on a call with her, she sees me nodding my head because it resonates with whatever content she shared, even on a call as well too. Just a beautiful person, just like Neil. So if you want more information about her, it's Soul Success, and with Neil Simple Music, and he addressed the creativity piece earlier. I want to make you aware he's writing a book too, so be on the lookout for that book in the future regarding creativity. So, you know, they mentioned a couple of things about the way I heard it is, hey, I was able to scale without additional team members from a resource standpoint, in consistency as well too. You know, one thing that we hear from prospects all the time is the lack of consistency in just going out there with a new tactic, whether it's Facebook ads or video and all those kind of things. And I want to share with you that on Tuesday at 11 o'clock Central Time, it'll be majority of Paul will be sharing with you some tips that you are very actionable, you can implement today to have consistent results. And there's also a recording that we did out there as well too. Our perspective is it's not just about content, even though content's important. It's not just about your website, even though your website's important. It's not just about ads, even though ads are important. They all have to be integrated. And when they're integrated, it sets you up to be consistent, ongoing. And one of the 3 values we're always focused on is, number 1, we believe everybody comes for sales. Number 2 is they want peace of mind. So for example, Neil was telling me that he just got back from Palm Springs, a vacation with his wife, and peace of mind is related to that ability for him to go on vacation, not have to worry about his technology. Number 3 is that consistency piece. And without question, you can't predict sales if you can't be consistent. So whenever you're looking for technology, our suggestion is at least it's how our tech stack is developed. It's all integrated and also automated as well too. And you know, folks, that a lot of people talk about that out there. What my suggestion is actually do a test run of it. It's one thing to say it's automated and integrated. It's another thing to make it happen without question. So with that said, the next question I have for both of you is, if there's one piece of technology that made the biggest difference for your sales in the last year, last week, what would that be that you would want others that are in your space, meaning your industry, of providing product services similar to yours, that they should be on the lookout for? So for example, maybe it's like using Google Analytics or the private analytics that we have, or hey, you didn't know about the importance of load speed, or maybe there's something new with Facebook ads that really impacted your business in the last year, or the way you look at your business from a technology standpoint. Does that question make sense, or is that too much?
Yeah, it does. I wasn't sure who wanted to go first. Jen, do you want to dive in, or shall I?
Sure, I can dive in. Yeah, for me, it was definitely Facebook ads. When I reached out to Paul after not seeing him online for a while, I reached out because I found out he was doing Facebook ads. And for me, it was like, I know what I have is valuable. I know I can serve at a high level. And yet I didn't feel I was getting in front of enough people. And so when I reached out to him, it was around the Facebook ads that I wanted to help get in front of more people, which they have done a beautiful job of. What I didn't realize is that it was all these other things too. The Facebook ads drives the traffic, which they are a miracle worker at, in my opinion. They just brought in just the right clients for me with the Facebook ads. But also, it's the campaign. You know, on the back end, they just did subtle tweaks to my sales page, to the email campaign, and on the back end of that, that just made me be able to leverage all of the leads that they were able to generate for me. So that's been, I think, the most powerful aspect, is having that you guys be able to get me out in front of more people through Facebook ads. And that follow-up was essential too. I realized I didn't realize I had a weak link there as much as I did until I started working with all of the support that we have done together in optimizing that whole system.
I'll interject slightly because I want to add into what Jennifer was saying, that the ads brings in the traffic, but then there's the rest of the campaign and those small tweaks. So you might be wondering, well, what are those mysterious small tweaks? The main thing is reviewing each asset. When I say an asset, that's a video, that's a post, that's an email, that's a web page, an audio file, and then looking at it and saying, is this really accurate? Is this bringing value to the person that will be consuming this? So if someone is watching your video, are they going to be able to do something different in their life? And I know with Jennifer and her campaigns, we make sure that she always has something practical, whether it's a guided meditation, whether it's tips from journaling or waking up in the morning, or what to do if you're having challenging experience. But there's always something that is practical. And we do that gut check. And even if we help craft some of the messaging, we say, Jennifer, is this accurate? Is this information true? So that her message stays very clear and it does not get diverted. And that's those tweaks that Jennifer was talking about.
I love that you're pointing those out, Paul. Just very quick here. I think it's very important for people watching this to realize is that as a business owner, you are probably not the best person to do those tweaks because you are so close to the content. You won't notice those nitty-gritty details that an external team like the Digital Navigator can pick up on.
And very practically, and then I'll hand it over to Neil. In the recent campaign, there was a lot of comments and questions to Jennifer about the dark night of the soul. So then immediately I told Jennifer, I said, hey, there's this great article you already wrote about it. Let's make sure we share that with your audience. And then later on, let's do a broadcast on this very topic, because clearly your audience is interested by this. And that's just very simple example.
Oh, I'd like to add on to what you're sharing as well. As you know, we use both these two as examples with all our other clients. And as easy as it sounds to go from this benchmark or where we started with them to here, there's just a lot of work on their side. Many times out there we hear about all-in-one solutions, integrated, scale, no problem, the 6 figures, 9 figures, whatever it is. There's a lot of work that's been done. And I would say that's made the biggest difference from my perspective on these two clients. And they've regularly met with us when there's been bumps in the road. That's just the reality of business. I don't need to tell these two, but I'm just sharing with the audience, is they always made themselves available to pivot and things like that. Now it's more smooth sailing. But there's a lot of work up front for sure.
And now we'll hand it over to Neil. Do you want us to repeat the question?
No, thank you. There's a few layers to this for me. In the earlier years, everything that I did was very me-centric. So it was me doing live trainings, me doing live events, me doing ongoing support, me doing handling inquiries. It was very real world, and it was me. And I had a very interesting experience one day. One of our educators approached me and said, I'm approaching you on behalf of, as the spokesperson for a great many of our educators. And she said, we need to know what would happen if you were to die. And it was a fantastic question. And it became the catalyst for me saying, wow, I've got to get everything that I have learned out of me into a format that can be disseminated and no longer requires my actual physical presence. That really became the move for us for filming and recording. In fact, my mantra from that point of time onwards became record everything. And a lot of content that I do, every call, every meeting, every inquiry, I recorded everything, because every now and then there was some explanation or some answer or some response that I gave that really nailed what I wanted to communicate. And I would much rather record it and not need it than not record it and afterwards think, I wish I captured that. So I began to build a really large, a vast library of digital intelligence. And that became the basis of our organization, which was incredible, massive game changer for us as an organization. However, music education is a very, very unusual industry. It's It's one of the very, very few multi-billion-dollar industries that doesn't have a nationally branded leader. Actually speaking, the music education industry is a massive, fragmented cottage industry. So even though we have a methodology that's a breakthrough, our delivery system was still the traditional model, meaning most of our educators were private educators working from a small studio or from home, teaching, students as you would ordinarily, being the local music teacher. And one of the things that happened with the pandemic, just before the pandemic really started to gain momentum, I saw, wow, if our educator community, who's largely tech resistant, certainly not tech experienced, the vast majority not doing online lessons, if we go into a lockdown scenario, our business shuts down. And so I went into doing a whole series of trainings for our educators to demonstrate how they could successfully teach using nothing else other than a smartphone. And wonderfully, we had this massive exodus of our educators move from in-person lessons over to online lessons, and that allowed us to absolutely flourish through the pandemic. So I didn't take on any new marketing endeavor. For me, that wasn't this issue, this time, this problem, this complexity wasn't what was needed. What was not needed for us was a new marketing endeavor. What was needed for us is, how do we build in stability through a period of time right now where all of that could be threatened unless we pivot on a dime and introduce a new distribution model, online lessons. Well, of course, that's opened up a whole new world of education. Parents have suddenly seen, wow, here I was driving 30, 40 minutes every day, every week to a lesson, 30, 40 minutes back. Now I don't have to do that. We can have the lesson online, and my child's already at the instrument so that they can immediately be playing and practicing. The efficiencies that it introduced, and whilst there have been some challenges with the online learning experience, it has opened up a new world. We now have educators that have an entire student body in every other country other than the country that they reside in. This is incredible. So we've been able to grow globally just because of the outreach of our educators without any investment in marketing plans, just as a result of taking advantage of digitizing the intellectual property and using technologies such as the one we're on right now to become the new and additional education or distribution model. So that has been the single biggest thing that has allowed us to have our best year ever this last year through the pandemic.
Nice.
And as I said before, the paradox of that, of doing so well in the face of so much tragedy, has required a degree of psychological gymnastics for me to get my head around that.
And you had a question, I think, or yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that was just an encouragement for everybody who's watching to share what your most important tech component is in your setup, because I want to really get a bit more engagement going, if I'm honest. So everybody who's watching this, I know that I see people watching, so I'm not sure if we are too intimidating on this call or what's going on here, but I would love to hear what you think is maybe the most important component in your stack, or also what you would think is a bottleneck in your stack. What is one thing that is holding you back right now from reaching the success that Neil and Jen have been sharing on this call so far?
And yeah, maybe I'll bring up some things that are the most common from prospects, and please interrupt me when you get some questions, okay?
Of course, yep.
So the number one question that I have coming from prospects, it's generally like this, and I'll share an example. Paul knows who I'm talking about this last week. Somebody's very successful offline, but online, she's bought every single program out there. And one of the things she's so frustrated about is Facebook ads. Why aren't Facebook ads delivering on what I was promised? And promised means sales. Well, there's a lot more to going online than just Facebook ads. It all is integrated and works together, as everybody on this call knows. But nobody tells folks that. Everybody's looking to sell most people a silver bullet. And business just doesn't work like that. For example, we talked about in our recorded session that you might have a wonderful Facebook ad, but also Facebook ad is just driving awareness. Then they've got to come to your website. When they come to your website, like Paul was talking about earlier, there's got to be some value offered there, and there's got to be a reason for them to stay on your page. An example we used with this person, I won't say her name in case she's listening, but it's pretty common out there. Let's say her name is, let's pick a name, Lisa. So what we shared with Lisa is, hey, we're not going to run Facebook ads for you until we fix your website and optimize it. Why is that? Well, our website was running really slow. Slow to us is anything over 1 second. The majority of people out there, when the prospect of ours, are running 3 seconds and higher. And with that said, is that if she's spending, let's say, $1,000 on Facebook ads, in her case, she actually has to spend twice as much for each lead coming to her website because the website's loading so slow. So the first thing that we all, 99% of the time, I say 99 in case I'm forgetting one, Paul, when we're talking to prospects, the first thing we're doing is actually optimizing their website. And there's many pieces of that. And so again, you can check out the recorded session that we did. That's out there. And then tomorrow, Paul's going to go deep in the technical so you can take action steps on your website and make sure it's optimized for speed. But that's a real, we call that low-hanging fruit. And again, Yan, please interrupt me at any time. I'm here if there's a question out there. Slower than 1 second, you're paying, yes, correct, twice as much for traffic. And that's just getting them to the site. We still got to collect their contact information as well, too. Why would somebody give you contact information? Well, the number one reason is they see there's value for me to provide it to you. How often, it was just happening to me this morning when I was online with a bank. A pop-up came up before I even had the gem to take a look at their site and understand, hey, are they from me? You know? So there's several steps. We believe there's 4 steps that we always talk to all our clients in, and you'll see in the recorded session. The first step is awareness. And generally, the example we use is just like dating. It's pretty crazy to go and marry somebody before you're even aware of them, right? And most businesses out there are asking us to marry them, meaning they want to sell us the car, or like in my case, it was a new business banking account before I even learned if they're right for me, right? The next step is engagement, is engage with whatever content you have on your page. And Jen's done a wonderful job of making sure that she has valuable content. And we just call that generating goodwill. We want to over deliver on that, so it becomes so impossible for me to resist providing my contact information to somebody like Neil business or Jen's business. And then once we have their contact information, we want to continue to deliver value to them so that we have an opportunity to do what our end goal is deliver and serve them in some way. And that might be just providing more products or services for free and getting their time, or a low dollar offer. And then we're going to send that the very final step and provide us, our grandiose product or service as well too. It works just like with dating to marriage as well too, is what we always allude to. Any questions out there? Yeah. I don't want to.
Well, what I'd like to do, Jim, is I have a good segue with what you shared and what Neil had previously shared, which is one of the things we always see is what you do offline, you do online. So when Jim was talking about optimizing your website and the experience after the ad is similar to what Neil was talking about, where he said, I need to show the teachers how they can teach with only a phone. And he said it was not a marketing problem that he had. He just needed to give that education so that they have that that confidence and they know how to teach. Bringing more teachers would not have helped grow the mission of Simply Music. And I know that both Jen and Neil communicate quite a bit to their communities. And this summit is all about building your audience online. So I'd like to hear from each of you what you're doing to stay connected with your community and your audience online. And if Jen, you'd like to start?
Sure. For me, I feel my business is so much around also connecting with my creativity. So it's important for me, I know, to stay connected and balanced myself. And so I have a practice where I tune in the mornings and the daytime, before I really get started, and I just get clear, what can I do to be of service and bring value to the community today? And whether I do it in a Facebook Live or a blog, I make sure that I give that time and space to connect with myself and see what wants to come through me. How can I best serve? And then I deliver a short piece of content in that way consistently to either my email list, or I also have a Facebook group community. And I do believe video is a great way. So I know many people are super afraid of public speaking and video, but it really builds that know, like, trust in such a beautiful way, and allows you to have people really see, feel, and know you in a whole different level. And so I have found that for me personally, I was definitely afraid. I mean, I was petrified of public speaking. In high school, I literally didn't even do any oral reports. Like, that's how afraid I was of it. But really working through that fear and, you know, being perfectly imperfect and just getting started with showing up and sharing your gift and your message, or whatever it is that you are here to bring forward to the world, will go very, very far.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I really like how you tune in first to see how you can be of service to your community. And it starts there. It's really with adding that value and making a difference. And how about you, Neil? How do you communicate with your audience?
In a number of ways, mostly via video. And one of the things that happened when we began to migrate our educator community over into doing online lessons, it opened up a unique opportunity as I saw it. The system that I have, which is a means of quality control, our teachers, when they present a lesson, the students are provided with a video of me presenting on video the distilled essence of that lesson, and they take me home on video or access me online on video doing a recap of the exact content of that lesson. So one, it ensures that the teacher is presenting things, preserving the presentational integrity that is at the core of the program, but it also gives me an opportunity to establish relationship with the students themselves. And so when we moved into the online environment, I thought, wow, you know, everyone was in the early stages was worried about, you know, Zoom bombs and things like that. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool for me to do lesson bombs where I could actually physically drop into students' lessons online and introduce myself and meet students and meet the parents and acknowledge the parents and thank them for their contribution and their commitment to contributing to their own child's creativity, and have a chance to hear them play and encourage them. This had a huge impact. So what I did with our whole educator community is I gave them a series of Calendly links, opened up a calendar, set different time zones where I was willing to do lesson bombs later in the evenings and things like that, so that our educators that were in the Southern Hemisphere or in different parts of the world would have access to it. And I just went into doing hundreds and hundreds of these lessons where I established a really strong personal relationship with our student community to help navigate everybody through this period of transition and support their commitment. So that's been one of the big things. We dialed up the engagement of our Facebook communities where our educators were able to come online and share a lot of the concerns. And so I became much more of a presence on that. I started doing very regular updates video, like not only in the training on how to use smartphones, but I invited teachers to share their setup, their simplest setups, and then sharing those online so other teachers could see how they were doing it successfully. We began doing more and more webinars. And also I moved mostly away from doing text-based email over to video-based email, where when somebody wrote me an email, I wouldn't reply on text, I would reply on video, so that everything had a sense of, wow, we are in a state of lockdown, but we are exponentially increasing the amount of personal communication and connection that we have with both our educator and our student community. That's been massive for us.
Wow. So that's deliberately doing the unscalable, then, if I understand correctly, because you give your own time for those video bombs where you join the educators. You reply via email, which could have been done by a VA or by an assistant, but you take the time to record the video. And by doing that, this just creates so much more trust with your audience and shows so much more care.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in an era where we talk about simplifying and digitizing and automating, and I get all of that, but it's not always the answer at all times in all circumstances. And right now, my view of what we needed is I needed to elevate the humanity of this experience, and everyone had moved over to a digital learning experience. Well, then, boy, I'm going to give them a personal connection experience, and if that meant the expenditure of my time, and it was a significant increase in my time, it's really, really been worth it, because the outcome of it now is that the heightened level of commitment from our students goes directly to student retention and longevity. And that means, Well, the longer the people in lessons, the more they maximize the likelihood of having music in their life for the rest of their lives. And that's central to creating a breakthrough in creativity for humanity.
Love it.
And I know too, when we're talking about scaling the unscalable, some of you might be listening and think, well, hey, I actually have 1,000 attendees to my events. How do I actually do what Neil is describing here? And I know that Jen, on your side, you do a lot of broadcasts and you have hundreds and thousands of people in them. And then you go back to the various comments, you answer people, you tune in to what they need. And you also open up those time slots to meet with them. Is there any other tips that you'd like to share about how you're doing that personal touch with large audiences?
Yeah, I think it's very important to do that. It's valuable on many levels. It's really worth the time, because a lot of times people are going through and reading the responses that you're giving to one question to a person. It might be somebody who never even wrote a comment is reading those responses. And so through that engagement, they're getting to know, like, and trust you again, and kind of resonate with, do I resonate with this person or not? So you're building that I would say influence with them that makes them decide that they want to work with you if they're the right person. And so through that process, you start to whittle down the people that either are your ideal clients and the people that are not your ideal clients. So by the time I'm offering a 15-minute conversation with somebody to go over, hey, I want this to be a win-win. Is this right for you? I make it very clear at that point, they've already kind of decided in their own mind. And so at that moment, I'm perfectly willing to step into a conversation with somebody, because at that point they know you so much that at that point they oftentimes just want permission to say yes, right? Or even clarify a few things that might not even be an issue, right? That you can just dissolve that concern for them. That usually I find they're ready to just say yes, and they just want to connect and get that reassurance. And in that moment, it's beautiful as well, because you've just created, again, that deepening of that connection, so that when you do work with them in the program, you already kind of have a general sense of who they are, and they really, really appreciate that. So I have found that the people that are stepping on the calls, when I have taken the time to do Q&As and respond to comments, they've already decided that they align and resonate with my teachings. Does that make sense? Versus just putting it out there to anybody. So, yeah.
That makes total sense. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I know that several people listening right now have, that group audience, and it's important to keep that personal touch. And you mentioned something that I'm going to actually turn it to Jim, which was, Jen, you said, well, whether they're a client or they might not be a client, I answer their questions and I provide them value. And I know that that's something that, Jim, you do when people book a consultation with us. Can you share a bit about that value first perspective?
Yeah, first of all, if you don't mind, I'd like to share the tactic that Jen's doing to just even make contact with people, if you're okay with that. So it's worked well for Jen, is whenever you're reaching back or reaching out for a contact, just through many different iterations of an email, is what we do is, first of all, is put the name of the contact up there. If it's a referral, put the name of the person who's referring you, because there's a moral obligation that they need to open it. So for example, let's say Neil gives us a referral. I'll put Neil's name up there, and if the referral is Jen, that way she feels morally obligated to open it up, and she'll recognize it amongst the million emails she gets. So that's the first thing. It's not about manipulation. I want that person to see the email, because I know there's going to be some goodwill exchange with the focus on them, meaning servicing them. The next thing is just greet them, but don't make it long, because they might be on their phone, might have kids like myself, and just make it real simple. Will your schedule allow you to meet for 10 minutes on these times? That way it'll prevent going back and forth. People like Jen and Neil and everybody else out there is very busy, not just with their own work, but many personal things too. So we want to make it as easy as possible. So we always ask for 10 minutes, is what Paul's alluding to. And then in that 10 minutes, I always make a promise we're going to offer value to that person, meaning actionable value. It has nothing to do with doing business with ourselves, but I also know, and everybody knows offline, that's how you build a relationship. You don't talk about yourself. I often hear in the past, and the worst kind of data, a lady can go on, and please confirm if this is true or not, Jen. I already can see you shaking your head before I even say this, is when you go on a date and the man just talks about himself the whole time. There's nothing better than that on a date. It's the same thing when you're reaching out to a prospect as well too, is give them something in return, take interest in them is one of the most important things that you can do, is providing goodwill to them. without question. You'll see that in our presentations too. We don't introduce ourselves in the very beginning on our presentations that you'll see on the summit. It's sharing with you what the game plan is and then getting right into the resources as well.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're alluding to, Paul.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you so much. And I believe, Jan, there's a question.
Yep, there's a question from Amy Lou Jenkins. Amy, thanks so much for participating here. The question is, can Jen be more specific about how she showed up online, where, what platform, to whom, paid or public group, how to differentiate content for paid versus free audiences? I think that's a really solid question.
Yeah, where we were showing up is I did a 4-day Facebook Live series. And so I have a public group that I have been building and nurturing over time through launches. It's growing and growing. And so we will stream this 4-day series into my public Facebook group. And so that's where I will be creating that know, like, and trust and answering questions and showing up, giving a lot of value there. And when it comes to the paid group, so that was a public group, just for your verification there. And that was to enroll into a paid program. So the differentiating your paid and free audiences, I think you really have to have that in mind. I mean, there is some strategy there. I mean, I'm pretty giving when it comes to giving through Q&As. When people are asking me, I will do my best to truly not hold back or withhold. At the same time, when it comes to core content, I know here's my paid program. Right, here's what I'm giving for free. So there is a relative amount of, I'm speaking to them and sharing. I know that there's like my TLC body meditation or certain go-to free resources that I know is going to get them started to support them and really give them some value for sure. And I also know what my paid clients are going deeper with, right? And so the paid teachings, you do want to have a little clarity about what people are stepping into at that next level for sure. But most of that stuff isn't something you can teach in a Q&A call, right? So when people ask me questions, I'm pretty straightforward and just really do my best to give as much value as possible in a 1 or 2 minute response, right? Does that make sense? So I do have that clarity within myself, and I give pretty freely in the moment with what's being called forward.
So the focus is rather on answering the question and delivering as much value as you can over, I want to just give a little bit and then charge for the full answer.
Absolutely. The free series that I give, people have, I get pouring in of emails. This changed my life. I've made this decision. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And I know darn well that what I give for free during that period of time, people do charge for. People do make that a mini course and charge easily $197 or more value. And people have had very powerful shifts. So I definitely give lots of value. And there's always more for those that want to go deeper, but that might require more time and dedication from me as a teacher to actually go deeper with them. And so that's really where it becomes the difference.
Love it. Amy Lou, please let us know if that answers your question. I'll be monitoring the chat on the website for your response.
And actually, I see Neil is smiling. I would love to have your thoughts around free versus paid content, especially coming from someone that has changed a business online, which I presume has a bit more fluid lines, because paid before it was the DVD or things like that. Do you have any insights that you'd like to share with the audience on paid versus free content?
Well, the amount of free content that we provide is enormous. So if you were to go onto our website and register in the free program, I don't use it as an upsell. I use it as everything about it reaffirms that this is not a marketing upsell. This is free education with no strings attached. And we have individuals that are using this. We have small schools that are using the program. It can be really delivered incrementally as a year-long course. And I know the enormity of the value. I'm getting emails regularly from people that are talking about the impact that the program is having. Now, one of the reasons why it's so easy for me to do that is that I've built a very large body of intellectual property. And I know in the scheme of things, whilst the impact might be enormous and whilst the content might be wonderful, which it is, it really only represents a tiny fraction of the totality of what it is that I offer. The main thing about it is that I'm committed, but I'm not attached. I know that if I can provide you with content and it is something that impacts you, you're going to be whether or not you demonstrate loyalty by becoming a client of mine, you will refer other people, you will talk about it. It's something that every time you sit at the instrument, you will be connected to us through the ether. And doesn't matter to me whether this is true or not. I just get value in believing that it's true, that if I come from a place of uncommitted generosity where I don't need an outcome, then I just believe that what happens is that energetically I get compensated by the fact that I get to contribute music and self-expression to people all over the world, and I've been able to build a multinational organization, and it's provided me with an extraordinary lifestyle, and I just feel blessed. So I don't need to measure that by the dollar sale, incremental dollar sales from one program or the other. I hope that wasn't too vague.
No, not at all, actually. That was very specific. And one of the things is about making sure that there is that value and it's no strings attached. That's what I got from both of your messages, is like, whether they decide to show that loyalty and become a client or not, that doesn't matter. You're looking at making that connection, actually making a contribution, and then indirectly, it will have an impact on your business.
I believe so. And the evidence says so thus far.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much again for the partnership, Yan, and then Neil and Jen, to give your time on it's a Monday in the United States. And so I want to just say thank you for giving your time in the morning with your time zone. I know when I start my day on Mondays, I usually have a plethora of a million things to look at, and I don't even know if our business is as busy as yours. So I just want to say thank you very much, more so than just being a client as well, too. Again, thanks for giving some of your personal time to the event today. And you can find
big
both
shout out to the sites, by the way. So that's Jen's site, so successunleashed.com. And then for Neil's site, simplymusic.com. I've seen them both very, very exciting and value packed. So kudos for building those sites.
Kudos to Digital Navigator for the stability they've provided on that platform. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone. It was a real joy of having everyone here. And if you want to learn more as well about what we do at the Digital Navigator, you can find us through the special booth of the summit. Or if you have follow-up questions for Neil and Jennifer, we'd be more than happy to relay those for you. And I also want to add the last website for Neil that may interest our audience, which is Piano Online. So you might be wanting to tap into your own creativity and learn to play the piano. You can do so completely free there, where there's a full-fledged program, which is really amazing there. And if you also would just want to get to peek a little bit about how that platform is built out, you can go in as a user as well.
Talk about leading with value right here. That is super cool. And speaking of leading with value, I want to pitch your booth one more time, because there is what you just glanced over. There is a Wheel of Fortune in your booth where you give away landing page templates that have been built meticulously with so much attention to detail that it's insane that you're giving those away for free. You're giving away an email onboarding sequence to build a relationship with your new subscribers, with your audience, which saves a ton of time of writing that yourself. And those are reason enough. You're giving away more on the booth and on the Wheel of Fortune. Highly recommend checking out that Digital Navigator space. So if there aren't any further questions, I don't see any new questions in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thanks, Paul and Jim, for organizing this, for bringing Neil and Jen on. It was a pleasure to meet you. We'll wrap this up right now. As Paul said, we'll relay any questions that you're entering on the replay. Thanks for watching, everybody, and enjoy this event.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.